On behalf of HBO and NFL Films, it is my privilege to formally announce that the 2017 edition of Hard Knocks will feature the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
You know, there's a lot of hard work that goes into a season, and HBO and NFL Films will be able to capture that. The work that goes on behind the scenes that sometimes isn't detailed or goes a little bit underappreciated.
One of the founders of NFL Films, Steve Sabol, said that doing Hard Knocks is like creating an airplane in flight.
I think we've really embraced presenting these guys as fully formed people that a general audience can identify with. You know, getting to know them off the field, getting to know what's at stake.
I think the players are genuinely excited about that, and I just told them that you know, this is one of the things that comes with the territory. We have business at hand, and we need to take care of that business.
Let's ball now. Let's bring it to him already. Let the flash go on, right with you.
It's going to be the Donovan and Alley show.
On the ground here, there's 32 people total. At any given practice, there's going to be 6 manned cameras, 5 of which will have audio.
Everyone here in this room today, we all have a job. The people that work for the Bucs, we all have a job to do. I'm very aware of what my job is in all this, and that's to get our football team ready to play.
I would hope that the national audience piques their curiosity and they say, "Oh, I'm excited to see, you know, what this summer's going to bring."
The arrow of progression continues to trend in an upward motion for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And now the rest of the football world will shine the national spotlight on Tampa as the team prepares to be featured in the HBO hit show Hard Knocks this summer. Can Jameis Winston take the next leap and lead the Buccaneers to the playoffs? John Sabol is a sports anchor for ABC Action News WFTS in Tampa. He joined me on Friday to preview everything Buccaneers. So first of all, John, we want to take the time to welcome you to the Two-Man Advantage podcast, and we're excited to talk some Tampa Bay Buccaneers football with you this afternoon.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So when we look at the Bucs being featured on Hard Knocks this year, my first question has to do with what storylines are you most looking forward to developing while watching the show, and what are your overall expectations for this Bucs team this year?
Well, the Hard Knocks, when we heard that was going to happen, everyone here in the Bay Area was just really excited because we in the media, we see how this team is on the field, a little bit off the field, interacting with them, and they have this great feel and buzz with this team. So finally, you know, the world can now actually see what we've been seeing, and then there's parts of this team that we've never seen before. Obviously, we're not around them 24/7, so it's going to be a great opportunity for us to see these players on and off the field interact with each other. When I look at the show, and the premiere's coming up next week, I'm looking at how I want people to see how Jameis Winston really is. I mean, we see him in interviews, we see him talking in the locker room after games, and he's the fun guy, a leader, and I think sometimes people forget that's who he really is. And I think you'll see that a lot in Hard Knocks this year. I think you'll be able to see the Jameis Winston that we locally see as a fun-loving kid who just wants to continue to improve, you know, and strive for greatness and get the respect from his older teammates. I think that's one thing that you'll really get to see, as well as how some of the veterans will get to interact with these younger players, like a Deshaun Jackson. His leadership qualities, and we can talk about it, will be very intriguing for these younger guys, like a Mike Evans or Chris Godwin, the rookie wide receiver out of Penn State. We've already seen a little bit of teaser videos that HBO and NFL Films have tweeted out of Deshaun on the field talking to the players, or Deshaun at home with his family. I mean, these are different glimpses that we haven't been able to ever see before, and that's the good thing about this show. It shows you, but it also shows you side of these players that the players see and the coaches see, but not the media, not the fans. And we've already seen how Deshaun Jackson is already kind of leading this team, and how Mike Evans and some of these other guys are already looking for him to advice and leadership. And to follow up on your other question, what am I really looking at this team and the expectations? This team, I think, is playoffs for bust going into 2017. They missed it by 1 year last year, and they missed it last year without Doug Martin playing consistently like he did the year before in his contract year. They did it without a deep threat in the wide receiver position. And they did it with half the year of having the defense is one of the worst in the league. And it wasn't until about week 7 that the team bought in and finally grasped Mike Smith's defense schemes. And you saw, like, just with a switch and then dramatic change in plays and stats and numbers and everything. So they still missed the playoffs by 1 game with all the changes that they've made. So now you're going into 2017. You have this defense that has already bought into the system, that has already had about half a season under their belt in getting it. You have Jameis Winston, year 3. We expect him to just, go in the upper tier of the quarterbacks in the league. You have a Deshaun Jackson signing that gives the Bucs a deep threat. And you have other little pieces there that make them really dangerous, like an O.J. Howard. You have Chris Baker on the defensive side on the line. So I think if they stay healthy and we just are going week 2 of training camp, I think this is playoffs or bust, and I can see this team going 10-6. And I don't know if they can win the division, but I can see them getting in as a wild card.
Now, you talked about it in your previous answer. Obviously, the Bucs felt like they had to upgrade their speed on offense, getting Deshaun Jackson and O.J. Howard and Chris Godwin in as offensive weapons as they try to speed up the maturation process of Jameis Winston. So I'm wondering, how do you think these offensive pieces will mesh going into year 3 for Jameis Winston?
It's interesting watching practice and watching how we saw them a little bit in voluntary minicamp with Deshaun and Jameis and Mike Evans, and the chemistry that's building. It is building fast and furious, and they seem like they're ahead of schedule. I see this, to me, it looks like you should have a seamless transition for Deshaun Jackson in this offense. You should see the complementary of having Deshaun Jackson on one side, Mike Evans on the other, or if they line up both on one side. It's going to wreak havoc for defenses. You have Mike Evans, who is I think he gets overshadowed by some of the younger wide receivers in the league, like an Antonio Brown or an Odell Beckham Jr. But you have Mike Evans in there, who is a big guy. He's 6'5", 230, and he lost some weight in the offseason. He looks faster. So that connection with Jameis is there. Mike Evans is a very unselfish player, and with Deshaun Jackson on board, Mike Evans' numbers will probably drop a little bit. But Mike will be the first one to tell you, he doesn't care. He wants to win. And he's an ultimate team player, as well as Jameis is. And, one thing we can't forget about when we talk about O.J. Howard on the tight end position, we also can't forget about Cameron Brate, the other tight end, who is entering his 3rd year out of Harvard. And Cameron Brate had a phenomenal year. And this is a guy who obviously went to Harvard, so he's book smart. But he is a guy who is like the other one. He's very unselfish. He wants to win. He wants to help the team in any way he can. And, he had 57 receptions last year, 660 yards, 8 touchdowns for a guy who came out of nowhere as the second-string tight end. But when they got rid of Austin Seferian-Jenkins, Cameron Brate stepped in with a great target for Jameis Winston. You're going to see Brate and O.J. Howard both play a lot on this offense. You're going to see them split time. So Brate's numbers are obviously going to drop, but you're going to have a guy like Cameron Brate who's 6'5", right next to a rookie in O.J. Howard who's 6'6", and Mike Evans who's 6'5". These guys are tall targets for Jameis Winston. So this offense, on paper, should improve dramatically in this second year of this system. And, 3rd year technically, but 2nd year under Dirk Koetter, because he was the offensive coordinator in his 1st year with the team. And Jameis Winston is just continuing to improve on and off the field with the way he's leading this team throughout the summer, organizing team activities, and workouts, Deshaun Jackson and Mike Evans and Cameron Braden. This team has a buzz to it, and it's kind of hard to describe except from the very see it and feel it. You talk to these guys. Jameis Winston will be the first one to tell you there's a lot he needs to improve on. I mean, Jameis Winston last year forced a lot of passes. He tried to force plays on third down and ended up getting intercepted a lot. He and Dirk Koetter all talked about how what he needs to improve on this year is not forcing the passes, do not throw the interceptions, take the punt when you can, and he was, I think, ranked in the top of the interceptions last year. So that's something to look at this year is see Jameis Winston's decision making and how he improves on that side. We know he has the skills, and we just need to see a drop from his 18 picks from last year.
And I have a follow-up in terms of coaching. What do you think about the differences between Lovie Smith and Dirk Koetter? Because when Lovie Smith was hired there in Tampa Bay, he was sort of hailed as the son coming home because of all of the success he had while Tony Dungy was the coach down there. But obviously it didn't work out. So what do you see as the differences between Koetter and Smith? And why do you think Cutter's been so successful in his first 2 years down there?
Well, I think it comes down to a few things. Lovie Smith was really well respected, but there are things that he might have done with his organization, with his practices, and play calling on offense and defense that would really kind of made you scratch your head a little bit. Players bought into it to a certain extent, but when you saw some of the roster moves that they brought, the guys that they brought in, the draft was one thing because that was Jason Light, the general manager, making the calls there. So that wasn't really Lovie Smith. And the picks that Jason Light did get have all relatively worked out really, really well. So I think the message, like Lovie's message, kind of got old after a while. I think it just got old. I don't think the players bought into it after going into year two and halfway through the season, and the team just continuing to show. Dirk Koetter is a completely different coach. He's kind of old school in a way where, he will bark and will demand attention, and Lovie's a little more passive, a little more quiet. So in terms of personality, they're a little different. And I think with this team and with the players that they have on this team, a lot of the personality out of it, a lot of the guys that they do have, I think they kind of needed a spark. They needed to kind of light a fire, and I think that's what Dirk Koetter brings to this team. He gets their guys' attention, he gets their respect, and they had Lovie's respect too, but the message got old, and Dirk was with this team. Lovie and Jason Light hired Dirk Koetter as the offensive coordinator. Remember, he was with the Falcons. So they had this system. But what Dirk Koetter did his first year was he brought in his really good friend and former boss in Mike Smith, who was the head coach of the Falcons while Koetter was his offensive coordinator. And now Mike Smith is the defensive coordinator, and then now Dirk Koetter is the head coach. So he had a lot of, on the defensive side, may not necessarily need to worry about that because he had Mike Smith there. And for any guys that he needed last year in his first year, he went to Mike. And Mike probably gave him a couple tips of advice and helped him out. So that seamless transition was really obvious in all of our opinions. And without maybe a Mike Smith there and without actually being in the organization a year before he got promoted, I don't think you see it being as smooth. Now, this is his third year with the team, second as a head coach. He's got a year under his belt of head coaching experience. He made mistakes last year because he called plays even as the head coach. And there are times where he owned up to something. Yeah, well, this play was a bad call and it cost us the game. That's my fault. Maybe I shouldn't have called the timeout here. You give it. There's a lot of different examples. Those are rookie head coaching mistakes. But by all means, that's not necessarily why this team didn't make the playoffs last year. It's just because of injuries and lack of experience overall on the field. So Dirk Koetter, we expect to see him continue to grow just as the players do.
Now, when we look at the Bucs, we talked about this earlier and how their defense progressed throughout the course of the season. What do you think is the next step for the defense in particular to grow as they go into this new season?
Well, we look at a guy that I really think everyone should look out for this year is Quan Alexander. Quan Alexander came out drafted. Jason Light got him. He's entering his third year. He was picked in the 4th round in 2015. This is the guy who played every single game last year and doubled his tackle total in 4 more games in his rookie year. And he is going to be, I think, this season, you're going to see his name mentioned in the same conversation as Carolina's, Luke Kuechly. I mean, this guy is a beast. He is a phenomenal athlete. He's a freak physically. And you line him in the linebacker core with this team next to, guys like Levante Davis, who we've seen what he can do. And the year growth you're going to see at Quan Alexander, I think, is really going to move this team even farther. I think look out for him. I think he's poised to have a big year. Vernon Hargreaves, he's a local guy. He went to high school here in Tampa. Went to Florida. He had a decent rookie season. He got burned on a lot of plays. Granted, teams were mismatching him, and Vernon just did not adapt really well to him. He only had 1 interception, but he was thrown to targeted more than any other cornerback in the NFL, and teams picked him apart. That's expected as a rookie. I mean, the kid's talented. He lost some weight too. He's faster this year. He's cut, and he and Dirk Koetter and Mike Smith are the first one to tell you that there's a lot of growth for Vernon. So I mean, it wasn't a disastrous rookie season at all, but there were some things there. And you look at the tape, you look at the film that this kid could improve on, and he's already doing it now. And matching Hargreaves against Deshaun Jackson in practice is only going to help him. And there are times when Deshaun Jackson just blows right by him. Deshaun Jackson, the guy is still one of the fastest, if not the fastest guy in the NFL, and he's already 30 years old. So, and he's a freak in his own right, but you have Vernon Hargreaves matching up against him in practice, it's only going to make him better. And I look at Quan Alexander and Vernon Hargreaves as the 2 guys on the Bucs defense that you got to look out for. You still have Joe McCoy, a defensive tackle, who's been this leader of this defense now for a few years. He's going to come into his own this year. He'll be the same producing guy in the line that the Bucs have always needed to lean on. Pro Bowl guy, no worries there. Chris Baker was a free agent signing from the Eagles. He's going to help on the defensive end side as well to help out. William Golston, I think Noah Spence last year. He was a rookie, came out of Eastern Kentucky, played at Ohio State. He was used specifically on the 3rd down plays. I think you'll see him more rotated in there. There's a guy they also drafted, another LSU linebacker, is Kendall Beckwith. Now, he was hurt throughout the season when he was drafted and didn't participate in mini camp and voluntary camp as well. But now he's back, and he's been cleared to practice. So there's another guy that they could look at as well. And he and Quan Alexander, both LSU guys, played with each other at LSU. They're only a year apart. So there's a lot that Quan can help him with. And the defense has a great mix of young talent. It's got a great mix of leadership. Robert Ayers, the defensive end, another guy who's been in the league for a while, who had a phenomenal year last year. We talked about Gerald McCoy. Other guys in the secondary like Keith Handy and Chris Conti. Those guys are still there. And Keith Handy's been pretty much a backup his whole career. This could be his chance to finally shine as a starter. And I can't talk about the defense without talking about a guy that didn't play at all last year, and that was J.R. Sweet. He missed all of last season after signing a contract from the Seattle Seahawks with a back injury. And he is now 100%. Everyone kind of criticized Jason Light for signing him because it was a waste of money. But at the time, it was a great call, a great move. And yeah, he missed his year last year with his back injury. Obviously, they wouldn't have signed him if they didn't think he was going to get hurt. But he's 100%. He's in better shape now than he was before his back injury. And that's almost like, people wanted the Bucs to draft another defender on the defense, but they didn't need to because they knew J.R. Sweet was coming back and was going to be 100% to help this team. And you talk to some of the offensive linemen, or the defensive linemen here, of how he's going to help the offensive side of being a guard. That's only going to help Jameis Winston. So you see Sweezy lining up on offense, who's helping, going up against these guys like Robert Ayers, Gerald McCoy, and Noah Spence, and they are raving about him. So it's only going to help the defense going up against a guy like a J.R. Sweezy on offense. And this defense should be, hopefully, on paper here, one of the best in
Now, I've got a two-part question for you, and it has to do with X factors. Obviously, if they get a healthy Doug Martin, that changes the dynamics of their offense. So my question has to do with what have you seen from Doug Martin so far in camp, and what other X factors do you see for this team this year?
Doug Martin's a really, really good storyline to look for here because, Jason Lyons talked to ESPN last week and was quoted basically saying that Doug Martin, when he gets back from the 3-game suspension, is not promised his starting spot. You know what? He's not even promised a roster spot either. He's done everything right, and the team's been impressed with how he's responded to everything. He's looked great in camp. He's in phenomenal shape again. He knows. He said he has a chip on his shoulder going into the season. He knows he has to prove himself again. He knows that he has to be the Doug Martin of old. And during those 3 weeks is what the team's really going to look at the first weeks. He can't have any contact with the team. He can't work out in the facility. So he has to take his personal trainer and go somewhere else and work out. So the team is really going to be wondering how he's going to be during those 3 weeks. If all goes well and he stays on track, and let's say the Bucs offense, the running game, is just okay, I think Doug Martin will be plugged back in. They go off and running with Jameis Rogers and Charles Sims and Peyton Barber and rookie at Boise State. I wouldn't be surprised if Doug Martin doesn't play a game next year with the Bucs. If the running game without him just goes through the roof. There's no promises. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. Do I think that's going to happen? No. I think he'll still be in the team. But don't be surprised if they do make a move like that, because with him being suspended, the Bucs don't owe him that much money. I think his contract is his signing bonus for the year, I believe, something like that. It's a null and void. But he looks good in camp. He's done all the right things. He's done all the right things, in the off season during mini camp. He's been during voluntary mini camp as well. He looks great. He and Jameis Rogers and the rest of the running back core, they all are close. They get along great. If you're talking X factors heading into this season, if you want to look at the running back, I look at Jameis Rogers. I want to see if this guy can continue to put up the numbers he did last year when he was healthy, when he was taking a load from Doug Martin. This is a guy who kind of was an afterthought when we played with the Atlanta Falcons, and maybe didn't really necessarily get the dirt time they really should have got. But he performed really well last year when he was healthy, and led this team in a lot of different ways in the 10 games he played. Albeit, he may not have the numbers to back it up, but you got to look at the way the offense was running last year. But he had 2 big games and big wins at San Francisco and at Carolina last year, over 100 yards. And keep in mind, he also had games of 19, 26, and 30 carries back to back to back. And that's not something we saw a lot of in the past with other running backs on this team. They're going to use a lot of them. They love the running back depth. For whatever reason, and it's actually great because now in the NFL, you look at it, there is no such thing now as having a one-dimensional running back that does everything from one snap, from first down to fourth down. Every team is loaded with running backs. The Bucs have running back depth. They love it. And last year, we saw injuries to Doug Martin and Jameis Rogers. Peyton Barber stepped in a little bit and he got hurt. You had guys here on this team that really did well while they were hurt, and people stepped up, and it still helped them despite not making the playoffs. But I would look at Jameis Rogers as a guy to keep your eye on in the first few weeks, because if he performs well and the rest of the backs behind him perform well, that could give some big question marks around Doug Martin's return.
And finally, I've got a two-parter for you. What are fans' expectations for this team? I know we talked a little bit about it before we started the interview and how expectations are high down there for this particular team. And the NFC South is one of the most difficult divisions in all of football. So what are the division expectations for this team, and what's the local reaction down there about the Buccaneers?
A lot of people think this is a playoff team. Like I said, it's playoffs or bust, and fans are craving a playoff team. They haven't been in the playoffs since 2007. And they saw them miss it by 1 year, despite the struggles defensively, Jameis Winston's interception, injuries. They had an outside shot of getting in the last few weeks. They did a lot of things that fall in their favor. They knew they weren't going to really get in. But fans, they see with this team, they love the off-season signings. I think Jason Light doesn't get enough credit nationally of being one of those guys, one of those general managers that have been able to draft well. He is from the Bill Belichick coaching tree philosophy. So he worked with the Patriots, worked with the Cardinals. He knows how to evaluate talent really, really well, and he's done that. They've had great off-season free agent signings. So, on paper heading into this year, the expectations really is to get to the playoffs this year. Yeah, the division's tough. It's probably one of the toughest, if not the toughest in the league. Atlanta's still strong. Carolina, they're going to have a good rebounding year this year. Last year was incredible to see how they went from going to the Super Bowl and almost self-destructing throughout the year. That's not how they're going to be this year. That team is going to be there through the thick of it. And those games against the Bucs are always competitive. And then you have the Saints with Drew Brees, and Adrian Peterson is down there now. That's an intriguing storyline, how they can really use him and with that defense. So, it's a tough one. This is going to be a tough go divisionally. I would think you look at the Bucs' overall schedule, and I'm not one of those guys that look at the schedule and go, okay, that's going to be a win, and that's going to be a loss, and they're going to do this, and they're going to do that. I look at the front of their schedule, and it's favorable the first few weeks. At Miami, home to Chicago, and then at Minnesota will be a little tough. But then they've got a meat of the schedule where they play at home to the Giants, then they play the Patriots, and then they're at Arizona. So those weeks 4, 5, and 6 will be really, really interesting. And that is all before you even get into the division play. I mean, they play the division in the last half of the schedule pretty much. If you enter those 4, 5, and 6 weeks with a winning record against those teams, watch out. This team could surprise people. And if they don't make the playoffs, depending on health, key. Obviously, if Jameis Winston or someone gets injured, then that throws a wrench into everything. But if they stay healthy, don't be surprised if you see this team sneak in as a wild card and contend at least a little bit for the division. I still think it's Atlanta's to lose.
John, we want to take some time to thank you for your insight on some Tampa Bay Buccaneers football as they get set to be featured on Hard Knocks later next week. We want to thank you for your time, and it was a lot of fun, buddy.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, and hopefully we can do it again if we're previewing some playoffs. If they're in, we'll love to talk more.
Sounds good, John. Have a great day, and bye for now, buddy.
Thanks a lot. Take care. Thanks for having me.